At work, I was asked to code an application that interfaces via UDP with another application. And to do that, I want to practice a bit and code something myself first before I get that work project done. And I downloaded this small application here on my phone. It's basically just a UDP listener, which waits for incoming UDP traffic. And what I want to do in this project right now is I want to code a small C program that sends messages via UDP to my phone. So ideally, at the end of this video, we should be able to invoke a command on the terminal here via our C program that we coded ourselves, and then have a message pop up on my phone. That's the end goal. So let's jump right in. I've already created a UDP directory. Let's create a udp.c file, and then let's already include some dependencies. First of all, we're going to need standard IO, and we can already code a main method with a small printout just to stupid proof that we are not doing anything fundamentally wrong here. So let's start with hello world. Or let's start with message, UDP message sender. And to compile this, all we can do, or all we need to do, is specify the output file name. It's going to be UDP. And the input file name is called udp.c. And then we can compile this and immediately execute the file. So let's see what happens. And as you can see, we get the printout message here, UDP message sender. All good. But now comes the hard part. How do I get the networking established? And for that, I have to do some research. So let me just open Firefox with my configuration here. Okay. Now let's look up UDP in C. Oh, and let's also hide this taskbar because it's not very decorative. Okay. Then there's already a guide by Geeks4Geeks, UDP client server using Connect C implementation. We could technically, that's basically the implementation, I guess. Let's look up things from scratch. How can we do that? This is also an implementation here. Okay. UDP server client. Seems like everybody has already implemented something here. Okay, let's look just at the first couple of lines. What do we need? We need a socket, a UDP socket, and some dependencies here. I don't know which ones I need, so let me just search for UDP socket in C. And UDP sockets use send to. Someone just said send to here. UDP sockets in C use send to and receive from for message sending receiving. Okay, so let's look up UDP send to in C. All right, and let's close all the other code samples here. So there's in sys socket.h, which is a very, very low level library as far as I can tell. It probably interfaces directly with the kernel. And so we're going to import that, and then we're going to send to a socket a buffer of size length. Then we're providing a socket address and a and the length of the address. And the return value will be a size t. I don't know what the return value here actually means. Probably it's documented. What is the return value of that method? Let me look for return. It's just a byte, send 2 returns -1 and sets the error code to something. It's just an error code. Okay. Then let's just copy this send to method and let's do the following. Send message to phone. So let's see what we can already do. We have no idea what the socket is. We have the buffer is probably the message. And it's a void pointer, which means it can be any data that you want. So we can just say we want a constant character pointer, which is our message, and that is hello. And then we can replace this with the message. Then the length will be size of character pointer multiplied by the number of characters in that string. How do we know that? We can first hard code it. Let's just say 5. We can figure the details out later. Then int flags, by default we can probably pass 0. This is at least the case in most libraries I know. If you don't want to do anything special, you just pass 0 for the flags. Then we pass the socket address and a size t address length. Yeah, so we have to get the socket address. And so let me just copy this constant struct socket address, sock address pointer address. And let's go here and search for that. Oh, I didn't just search for the socket address, but maybe this is also helpful. Sock address. The sys/socket h header defines the socket address structure that includes at least the following members: socket family, character. Okay. Where do I get this socket address from? I mean, I can't just make up the values myself. The address family, SA family. And what is the socket data? Oh, that's the socket address. I want to send data to a socket, to a UDP socket. So that will be the IP of my phone, I think. And the socket address family will be probably this will probably be some enum. We have to check which socket address families there are. Probably they are defined in the header.h file. So what we could also do is we can look up the manual of the man page of the socket. So let me just go to a new terminal here and split it up as the other one. And then let's do man socket. And there's some documentation here. Linux Programmer's Manual. Oh, that's nice. In the past, I've spent quite some time always looking up things on Google, but maybe I should more often look up these man pages. Okay. Socket creates an endpoint for communication and returns a file descriptor that refers to that endpoint. Socket creates an endpoint. Okay. And returns a file descriptor that refers to that endpoint. The file descriptor returned by a successful call will be the lowest numbered file descriptor not currently open for the process. So does it just have a single socket here? And what is the return value of that? Okay, using Control F, I can scroll down. The domain argument specifies a communication domain. This selects the protocol family which will be used for communication. These families are defined in syssocket.h. The formats currently understood by the Linux kernel include, and there are some socket communication formats, which I would expect to be protocols. There's IPX, IPv6. Is there anything UDP here? Bluetooth. There's even Bluetooth. That's interesting. AF packet, AF RDS, AF LLC, DDP, Apple Talk, Inet. Maybe IPv4 internet protocols is TCP, IP, and UDP maybe. I don't know. What if I scroll down further? Is there anything useful? What if I go to the top and search for UDP? Not found. UDP, not found. Okay, what did I even want to do? I want to look up the send to function. Send to. Okay. Socket dgram and socket raw sockets allow sending of datagrams. Datagrams are the byte blobs which we send in UDP, which is a good sign, to correspondence named in send to calls. Datagrams are generally received with receive from, which returns the next datagram along with the address of its sender. Yeah, but how do I look up how send to is working? There's even a manual for the send to function. Okay. Send to. And there's the function. The system calls send, send to, and send message are used to transmit a message to another socket. Good. If send to is used on a connection mode socket, the arguments destination address and address length are ignored. Okay. And the error e-not-con is returned when the socket was not actually connected. Otherwise, the address of the target is given by the destination address. Yeah, so that is the address of the phone, which we can already specify here somehow. Do I maybe have to create that struct myself? Sock address address is equal to or just address is equal to, and then we create a struct that way, struct sock and then this address takes as input some fields. I just don't know which ones. send to. But here the documentation is really sparse. It doesn't even specify the data types. How am I supposed to read and understand that? Does this specify anything about UDP? Oh yes, it does. But nothing that's helpful. Okay, so send to, let me just look up this page right here. First of all, we create a socket. A socket as is created with the socket system call. All the parameters as well as the return value are integers. We don't have a socket yet, so I think we need one anyways, because that's the first input argument. So let's try and do that here. Int socket is equal to domain type and protocol. Domain. Communication domain in which the socket should be created. And as I've already guessed, it will be AF internet for plain IP communication. So let's just replace the domain with this. Can I just, is this an enum? Is this a constant? I will just assume it is a constant. Then the next step would be to find out what the type is. It's the type of service. We want to select a service that is required by the application, either a socket stream, a socket diagram, or a socket raw. I think we want a socket raw. I can just drop bytes on that communication link. Maybe I'm wrong. And the last field is, it's this protocol. And that indicates a specific protocol to use in supporting the socket's operation. And here we want to use, for UDP IP sockets, we want to specify the IP address, AF Inet, and socket, dgram, it's dgram. I read this as diagram, but of course we have to use dgram because UDP sends dgrams, which is it's what a UDP packet is called. So this dgram stands for datagram. All right, and then the last field is set as 0 here. Why is that? Since there's only one form of datagram service, there are no variations of the protocol. So the last argument protocol is 0. Okay, who could have figured that out? I would have looked for a UDP constant. So now we can pass as input the socket. And let me just comment all of that stuff out that we're not sure of yet and printf the socket. Socket, and the socket is an integer. And that's probably the ID of the socket, or I don't know what that resulting integer is. And let's execute the software. And we have the socket 3. Yeah, and whenever we execute the software, it's socket 3. What does socket 3 even mean? A socket as is created with the socket system call. Probably my system already has 2 sockets in use somehow, or is connected to 2 sockets. And socket 3 is created whenever I open my application, then it terminates, then socket 3 is closed again, and then when I rerun my application, it's opened again. So it's always 3. What happens if I run my application multiple times in parallel? So I do UDP, and then I append this AND, so it runs in the background. Yeah. And I then do UDP immediately again. That doesn't work. UDP, and maybe this does work. No, it created socket 3 for everyone, for every execution. Okay, it seems to be... I can't think of a good experiment to verify my theory about the sockets now. Okay, so step 2, identify, name a socket. So what we do is we bind to a socket. No, we just want to... If we want to bind to a socket, then we just expect messages to be received, but we want to send, messages. Is there the use of send to? Yes. Yeah, and that's what this tutorial here does. On the server, wait for a message. On the client, send a message. So let's go to this step 4 and go to where a message is being sent. And there's the send to. The server can use that address. With address, it probably means the socket address, and send a message back to the recipient's address. And we have to find out how to construct the message at the address. We'll probably need this structure here. And where is that defined? We use the structure socket address in, which is defined in the header net inet. This structure defines something. I'm wondering why we're now using something from a different library. The second parameter, the structure socket address, is a generic container that just allows the OS to be able to read the first couple of bytes that identify the address family. The address family determines what variant of the socket address struct to use that contains elements that make sense for that specific communication type. For IP networking, we use the struct socket address in. Okay. Then let's just look up how that socket address in is constructed here. So first, we probably need to include this header file. Oops. Include. Then the name of the header, and then let's close that. Let's see if it still compiles. Yes. And then we need to somehow construct this socket address. Before calling bind, we need to fill out the structure. The 3 key parts we need to set are the socket in family, the socket in port. And this in does not mean in a sense that it's inside something, but this stands for internet networking, I think. So what we do is we say we construct this socket. So let me just delete what I previously did. So we have the socket address in, and let's call it sin. So this is now the structure, and as the documentation on this tutorial says, we need to set only 3 fields there. The S in family, which is AF Inet. So let's set that. S in. It even has auto suggestions. That's nice. S in, but not the family. Family. and that is set to AF Inet. The S in port and the S in address. S in port. Oh, what format is that port? The port number. You can explicitly assign a transport address port or allow the operating system to assign one. If you're a client and don't need a well-known port that others can use to locate you, blah, 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 you can just let the operating system pick any available port number. I want to connect to my phone, and my phone listens for UDP messages on the port 12345. Let me just on my phone quickly increase the font size. So I can show you. Okay. So I hope you can see this now. It's listening on port 12345. And then I can press this listen button, and now it prints out listening for UDP packets on port 12345. All right. So I will say that the port that I'm listening, that I want to send something to is called 12345. And of course it's S in port, not just port. And the last step is to specify the IP address of the socket. So the socket internet networking address. This is just your machine's IP address. Yeah, in our case, it's not. It should be the address of wherever I want to send something to. And which data format is that? In this case, this guy sets the address to H2NL. What is that? And that's used to convert something to Little Endian. I don't know. S address. UDP C S in address. Let's look up what people online write. In address any. No. I don't know if that's even. I don't know how to specify the IP address right now. H2NS my port. UDP sent to server. How to simply send UDP data in C. Proceeds to list a dozen libraries that are imported. Yeah, it's not simple. Definitely not simple. Inet address, but this guy uses Inet address. And the server address is a string. So maybe I can use this Inet address function to convert a string, a constant character pointer, to an address somehow. Inet address. Yeah, so we get an in address team. I don't know, I just trust this guy right now. So let's just trust this guy and let's import this arpa inet library. And then down here we set the syn address to inet address. It's even suggested. Where is that coming from? It's coming from arpa inet from this import. Okay, so it seems to be available, and I can tell from my phone's settings. So you just go to the settings and then you type IP and search. And then the phone lists its network internal IP. I won't show you that because, well, yeah, because it contains my MAC ID and those sensitive information, but it's 192.168.178.102. Yeah, but this is easy to find out. You just have to type IP in the settings in your phone, and then you will quickly find out. Okay, so this is the internet address. And there seems to be an issue with setting that field because it's not the expected format. So let me just find out what the error message here is. Incompatible types when assigning the type to type struct in address from type in address T. Okay, so what's the difference between those types? Here, this guy here sets the s in address dot s address. Maybe this is the server address. I don't know. Can we just try that to set that? S address. S underscore address. So probably the S in address is also a structure with multiple fields, and one of those fields is a Inet address T. Okay, let's try. Seems to have compiled, seems to have done something. So do we now have all the information to send something to the phone? We have the socket. Let me just rename that integer to socket so it's clear that this is the socket. Then the message. What is the message? Our message is just hello. So let me just move that down because we only need it down here. And now I want to properly determine the length of the message. Because if I just pass this send to method a void pointer, then the method has no way to determine how long that pointer is and when other memory will be accessed. So we have to determine length of string. I definitely should know this, I know. There's the string length function. But I think there's also a different way using the size of operator. String length. How to find the length of a string in C using the size of operator. Yeah, this is for character arrays. It's not for... not for pointers. So here I say this... no, what am I even doing? Size of character pointer. No, maybe I can just say size of message. Maybe it is possible to determine the type, to determine the size of that message. I don't know. I will just print a test string here. Size of message is equal to, and then size of message. Just a small debug statement. Let me execute that. Of course, it doesn't yet compile because the last method execution is not yet fully correct. We have to enter a long integer here because size of returns a long unsigned int. And now there's a new error s is undeclared, and that is because I'm somewhere accessing the socket, or I'm printing the socket and don't write it out. And now there's a problem because I named that variable socket. It conflicts with the method called socket. So here I say socket equals socket, which is of course not good. Let me call the socket integer socket ID. I think that's an ID, so it should be safe. Socket ID. And okay, here's the result of our execution. The size of the message is 8. Does that make sense? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. Then maybe a new line at the end that is counted. No, there's no new line. I think there's this terminating character at the end of this. I think. What happens if I increment this by 1 character? Okay, no, that's wrong. So if I make this string longer, the size of won't grow accordingly. And basically that is because a character pointer is 8 bytes in size. And it does not... Maybe we have to dereference it. Size of message is 1. No. Okay, let's do it properly somehow. I probably have to use the string length function. It's part of string.h, and then I'm doing size of character multiplied by string length of message. And that doesn't work because I messed up again. And the method is called strlen. Strlen. So we now have a message that is 6 characters. That is correct. We probably don't technically need the size of the character because the character has a size of 1. So this should be working as well. Yeah. And if I increase the size of this message, then the string length will increase accordingly. So down here we can now uncomment this method and we can say the message has a size of string length message. Then that 0 was for some flags, I think. Then we have to pass the socket address and the address length. The socket address is now not a problem anymore because we determined it. It's the sin variable. And what is the address length? The address length is probably something we can see somewhere here in those documents that we saw earlier. The address length is, yeah, it's just the size of the structure. Okay. Then let's just pass the size of sin. And now I would expect this to work, but I can see an error message already here. So something is wrong. And it's probably the input that I give to the send-to function. Yeah, I have to pass cast this to a socket address pointer. Oh, and no, not just that. I am just right now passing the structure by value because we have set it up as the value. Now we have to pass in the address. And we have to make it a pointer. And well, we are making it a pointer, and I mean, we have to make it this structure socket address. Yeah, so we make it a pointer to a socket address instead of a plain socket address according to the socket internet networking format. Let's see. Okay. I will fix up the message string and I will make it subscribe. And if I execute this, and let me show you that, then we should see a message incoming. So my phone is still listening. Come on, focus. And let's try to compile and execute. And nothing's happening. But why? Why is it not working? Send to, we're calling send to, so I expect something to be sent. Are we sending it to the right port? Yes, the port is 12345. Am I listening or am I trying to send messages here? No, I am listening. Is my IP correct? 192.168.178.102. That seems to be correct. What else could be wrong? Size of message, send to, socket ID, message, string length message. Then a 0, then this cast here. And we're casting the rem address. What is that? Rem address, remote address. Yeah, but we have set that up. This is a socket address internet for the internet protocols. Remote address, and then probably something is wrong here. We have the socket address internet networking as in. The S in family is AF Inet. Right? I hear this guy sets up my address. Does he set up the remote address anywhere? Yeah, here, rem address. Yeah, there's no code example about that one, but it should be the same as my address. So we set it to AF internet. Then this guy sets the S address to H2NL in address any. Yeah, that is not very satisfying here. And the S import is set to H2NS port. Do I have to change the format of the port here? Do I have to use this H2NS and then port? And my port is 12345. H2NS. Do I have to import something for that? Converts values between host and network byte order. So this returns a uint16. It's coming from ARPA Inet. I don't know. Let's try. Maybe this is the error. So let's open the phone again. Let's check the log for messages. Let's wait for it to focus. And let's compile and execute. And there it is. Yeah. This is awesome. Guys, subscribe. And let me just fire more messages than just that. Subscribe, 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 and see how fast it is. Subscribe. What if I make it loop over something? So let's just do a while a for loop. Let's just send 100 messages, I smaller than 100, I plus plus. Then let's indent all the sending here, and I'm so happy that this is working. Let's remove the print statement. The message is subscribe. And then let's add the counter here. And probably we don't need the new line because it's logged on the phone in successive order. Let's then just print the I and check what happens if I fire 100 messages at once at my phone. Let me just delete this log and let's go. Right. Let me just wait for the focus. And let's go. Oh, the message is not formatted. Of course, because that only works with printf. I have to do something like... How do I embed a string into C? C, embed number in string. Oh God. Now let's forget about that. But what we can definitely do is we can change the message to something nicer. The weather is awesome today. Oops, just like this. And then let's try to send it again. And there are the old subscribe messages. And then let's go and try again. And there's the weather is awesome today. And then one final message just to celebrate this circumstance. This is my very first successful UDP project. Celebrate good time, come on. And as you can see, there it is. Awesome. If you enjoyed this small little mini project where I struggled too much with C itself and the libraries, but the final result ended up to be so awesome. If you enjoyed this small little mini project, then please stay around, leave a like, and come back next time. So in this project, we were really sending messages from our terminal via our own little C utility to my phone. How awesome is that? See you next time. Bye.